Welcome back to Infinite Auburn. My name is Chase, and I want to catch you up on a few events that happened this past week in Auburn sports. And I want to start by talking about a few stories. I'll tell you about some comments that Charles Barkley made about Bryan Harsin, what Greene said about NIL. We'll talk a little about SEC Media Days, as well as getting into the MLB Draft. So let's go ahead and start out with these comments that you may have already heard from Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley went on the Next Round podcast and said what a lot of fans have been thinking, and that's that if people would just leave Bryan Harsin, Bruce Pearl, Greene, all these guys alone and just let them do their jobs, we would be in a lot better place. Of course, it's Charles Barkley, and he chose to say it in a little bit different way, but I'll let you take a listen to hear what he said. But I have to say that overall, I agree with him. Let the coaches do their job, and we're going to be in better shape because of that.
I'm a Bryan Harsin fan, and this is to all the Auburn people. Leave that man alone and let him do his freaking job. He's only been there a year. Just leave the man alone, let him do his job. If they let Allen, Bruce, and Bryan Harsin do their job, I feel really good about Auburn going forward. And for the people who keep bothering this man, I wish somebody would just slap.
This past week, we found out who will be attending SEC Media Days for Auburn, and I have to say that it's very telling for the state of the program. We found out this past week that the players attending are Tank Bigsby, Derek Hall, and John Samuel Shanker. If you notice, when I said those names, I did not mention a quarterback, and that is very telling, and I think it's very smart. We're not in a place really where we can name a starting quarterback. If Bryan Harsin were to let Zach Calzada or TJ Finley or Robbie Ashford go to SEC Media Days, what that really does is it signals to the other guys that they really don't have a chance to start, and we don't want to do that, or I should say Bryan Harsin doesn't want to do that just yet. He wants them to compete. We've got fall camp coming up, and it's not time to name the starter just yet. It makes sense to take all three of these players for different reasons. Tank Bigsby obviously is our best returning player, or one of our best returning players, and I think he is a leader on the team. So because of that, it makes perfect sense to bring him to SEC Media Days in Atlanta. He's one of those guys that you want to represent your team, and it's just common sense for Bryan Harsin to bring him. Now, the other two are interesting for one main reason. Why would you bring Derek Hall and John Samuel Shanker? Well, yes, they're good players, but more than that, these two guys are bought into the Harsin philosophy. And that became very evident on February 4th when both of them tweeted their support for Bryan Harsin. They were both very vocal about how they felt about the criticism towards Coach Harsin, and I'll put both of those tweets up on the screen. But as you can see, they were very quick to defend him, and I think Coach Bryan Harsin took note of that, and he's more or less rewarding that. You bought in, I'm behind you, and I'm going to let you come represent the team. So I think all three of these guys make sense, but like I said, for different reasons. But all three of them will represent Auburn well at SEC Media Days. This past week, we also had some comments from Greene on NIL. So take a listen to what he says, and then I'll talk about it for just a minute.
And for Auburn to remain competitive on the field and courts of play, we need to compete and win in the NIL arena.
From what we've seen this past year, it is very clear that we have to win in the NIL arena, just like Greene said. So you're going to see a lot of changes with different NIL programs and attempts at Auburn, but I know that whatever happens, it's going to be in the best interest of the players. You saw the launch of the Spirit program. You've seen some of the players launch their own NIL initiative, and you're going to see a bunch more stuff that will go out there to try to help our players earn money on their own name, their image, and their likeness. And at this point, I know people have different opinions on it, but at this point, this is really the law of the land. This is what things look like, and this is the new space we have to work in. So whether you like it or not, for us to remain competitive, we have to stay competitive in the NIL arena. The next story I want to talk about from this past week is regarding the ratio of blue chip players on different teams in college football. And I want to look at, and if you don't know what a blue chip player is, those are your 4 and 5 star recruits. So I want to talk a little about that and where those teams fell. So I'll show a graphic from 24/7 Sports. And if you look at this graphic, you're going to see the top 4 or 5 teams are going to be very familiar, especially those top 3. You've got Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia up there with 89, 80, and 77% of their players being blue chip players. That is a very high ratio. But if you look towards the bottom, in the top 15, Auburn made the list with 54% of our players being those 4 and 5 star players. That's actually very good for us. And what they were trying to make the argument for is that these are the 15 teams who have a shot to actually make the college football playoff and possibly win a national title. And so we go back and forth on this. Do stars matter? Does it matter how good of recruits you get? And ultimately, I think that it does matter. It's not the only thing that matters. You still have to develop good players. We saw that at Auburn with Byron Cowart. He was a 5-star, I think the top recruit overall, and many would say he was a bust. He did not pan out the way we thought he would, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But just because you have the stars does not mean you're going to be a star player. However, if you look at the teams on this list, it is hard to deny that your star rating or your blue chip ratio, it's hard to deny that it matters. It does. It absolutely matters. But like I said, it is not the only thing. So ultimately what I'm getting at is, yes, this matters. No, it's not the only thing that matters. But the thing that surprised me is Auburn's doing better in this arena than I thought we were. The fact that we have 54% of our players over the past 4 classes are considered blue chip, that's not too bad. And if you look at the upcoming class for the 2023 signing class, we're currently at 100% blue chip. Yes, it's only 4 recruits at the moment, but we're doing pretty well. And some of the other guys that we're looking at would also fall in the blue chip category. So this is just something to keep an eye on. It's not the end-all be-all. It doesn't mean we're going to be phenomenal. It doesn't mean we're going to be terrible. But it's hard to say that the number of 4 and 5 star players you have doesn't matter, especially when you look at this list and the teams you see at the top have a very high percentage of those 4 and 5 star players or the blue chip players. So it's just something to keep an eye on, and I'm hoping that Auburn will improve. But ultimately, yes, it matters who you get, but it also matters how they fit in the program and how you develop the players. A lot has happened this week, and we also had the MLB Draft. So I want to quickly go through the Auburn players who have been drafted so far as of me recording this. And I'll start with Blake Burkhalter. He was drafted in the 2nd round, the number 76 pick, and he is going to the Atlanta Braves. Next up, I've got Mason Barnett. Mason Barnett went in round 3. He was the 87th pick, and he's going to Kansas City. Then we had Trace Bright. Trace Bright was picked in round 5. The 137th pick going to Baltimore. And finally, we have Sonny D. Sonny D is going. He went in round 5, the 148th pick, and he is going to Los Angeles. So congratulations to all these guys. You made for a very fun season of baseball at Auburn, and it was just incredibly entertaining the whole way. We went pretty far and made it to Omaha. Didn't win the whole thing, but ultimately I think you made everybody proud, and we wish you the best in the MLB. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Last Week in Auburn on the Infinite Auburn channel. My name's Chase, and I will see you in the next one.